Good morning, everyone. I'll call the Cook County Board of Commissioners regular meeting to order on this day, Tuesday, June 24th at 8:30 a.m. We begin our meeting with the pledge. Please rise. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
Madam Chair, I'd like to add something under administrator updates. It's a new version of a contract we have with Sawtooth Clinic for redundant supervisory services. Mental health.
Okay, we'll put that under 7C then.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as adjusted.
Support?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. At this time, we do allow some public comment, and I'm wondering if anybody in the audience has any public comment. Doesn't look like it, so we'll move on.
Madam Chair, I do have a comment to read that came in.
Okay.
This is from Don Davison, 583 South Shore Drive. So, according to the latest private assessment of our home, we can sell our house for $580,000 as a resident, or we could sell it as an Airbnb for $840,000. The county board needs to rein this in. Your ridiculous tax and assessment policies are driving up prices so that no one can afford to live here. You should be ashamed at your policies that you have brought about. We don't live in a VRBO, we live in our home. You should be encouraging home ownership, not nightly rentals. The county valuation of our house is what? $680,000, and not one county employee has set foot on our property in over 15 years. You are supporting incompetence. You should also be ashamed of the horrible practices you allow and encourage. I think you're all in over your heads seeking tax dollars, not tax fairness.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you on that. We'll move on to the consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we have the claims, the minutes from our regular meeting, June 10th, Memorandum of Understanding, ISD, Memorandum of Understanding with the YMCA, the Tofty 4th of July Parade and Fireworks Event Permit, termination of Kelsey Rye, CAD-DD, Waiver Case Manager. Does anybody want to pull anything or further information? Okay.
Madam Chair, I'd make a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Support?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Our first presentation is by the Highway Department, giving their annual report. Welcome to you. We always look forward to you,
Good morning.
at least once a year.
That's nice to hear. Yeah, I'll take that. It's great. And go home after that comment.
Okay.
Good morning, Chair Storley and Honorable Commissioners. We appreciate the opportunity to present our 2024 highlight of activities to you. In '24, we had one departure and one retirement. Both vacancies were filled, as was the 2023 carryover vacancy for a maintenance worker 2 in Tofty. You'll see that there were 3 hires of maintenance worker 2s. Additionally, the department transitioned one engineering intern position into an opening for a seasonal environmental worker position, and you'll see that hire on the screen as well. So those are the staffing changes for 2024. For projects, we closed out 4 carryover projects from 2023, and that is quite common, as there are sometimes what we call the punch list items, or the seeding, or perhaps some of the other environmental things that have to be taken care of the following spring before we can actually issue final payment. And then we oversaw 3 construction projects and participated in a multi-county road striping project, which we'll talk about as we go through the projects. So this screen highlights the 4 projects that were closed out from 2023. They comprise $7.3 million in construction, and they included 3 bridge projects, as well as our collaborative 5th Avenue West project, where the partners included the Cook County Soil and Water Conservation District and the city of Grand Marais. And of course, that was the largest project at $5.4 million. In terms of active projects, we had contract 1709, which included 2 projects up in Grand Portage. There was a delay. We had to refabricate one of the bridge spans, and so that project did remain open through the winter, with that last span placed early this spring, and now final items are being completed, including some paving and striping and so forth. We should be able to close that project out soon. This is probably my favorite project because it was a cast-in-place bridge, and we have all kinds of pictures. It was hard to pick one to show the intense labor that has to occur on site as they construct that bridge span and pour it on site. And so that was such an interesting project last year, and Robbie's a bridge guy, so he's just laughing at me. But I thought it was really interesting. And because we didn't have bridge bond money available, there is the motor vehicle lease sales tax money, which is basically another form of bridge bonding available. And that paid for the vast majority of this project, with some TST dollars making up the difference. And we were able to close that one out last fall. And of course, we constructed a new storage facility on site last year, and it was open for occupancy in December. As the board is aware, that $2.5 million that was our estimate at year end is now $2.9 million with the change order that was recently negotiated. And so now that that is complete, we are working on final items so that we can close this project out. And then I mentioned the multi-county striping project. That was the second year we'd done that on the Gunflint Trail. We did the upper half one year, and then last year we did the lower half, excepting, of course, this year's construction area going up the hill. And right now, as I believe Commissioner Sullivan was talking about, we are striping the rest of the county. So that is actually taking place today. And then for the maintenance program, the crew plowed for the last time in the spring on April 18th and the first time in the fall on Veterans Day. And we usually see plowing in about the first 11 to 15 days of November in most falls. This slide highlights the recurring activities in the maintenance division, and the road restrictions typically go on somewhere between about the 5th of March and the middle of March. In 23, it was quite late. They did not begin until March 29th. And so then in 23, they were lifted, the first bans on May 24th and the last on June 14th, which really is not that different from 24. It was just that they went on unusually late in 2023. Calcium chloride has been probably our biggest change. In 2020, the price was approximately $1 a gallon, maybe $1.01. And so from 2020 to 2024, we've seen an increase of over 50 cents a gallon. And that has really affected our budget and our ability to apply the volume of gallons that we used to do. In response to that, Robbie and our maintenance superintendent have developed a calcium chloride policy specifying criteria for where and how much we should be applying, so that we have a very strategic approach as prices continue to rise. Gravel, there isn't a lot of change in price. It was $7.35 per yard in 2023. It's $8.25 per yard now. Winter salt sand, each component went up $3 to $4 a yard from 2023. In 23, salt was $86.71 a yard, and sand was $48.57 a yard. So you can see the prices continue to rise. In terms of equipment, we did order our board-approved tandem axle plow truck as scheduled, but has happened the last 3 years. Delivery is delayed, and we'll see that when we talk about fund balance, because we are actually carrying a significant equipment reserve to pay for trucks that haven't been delivered from prior years. And then we were able to utilize just under $22,000 of CRISA money that was highway department specific to purchase a Hunter heavy-duty tire changer for changing our tandem axle tires. We have 100 of those tires on our trucks. And prior to the purchase of this tire changer, the shop crew was using pry bars to change these tires. And that is a significant change for our shop division, and we are really excited about that.
It's really cool.
It is. It's a game changer. This is a highlight of maintenance activities for 2023, or 24. I'm talking 23 and 24 so much, pardon me. It's really interesting to see the variety of things that they accomplish in a year. For example, the winter was light, and so they did a good share of the prep for our heated storage facility site rather than paying the contractor. Huge savings for us. You can see the cross pipes, the shale that we hauled from the Gunflint View site, and we're able to crush and now keep and use it for road maintenance projects. The signage, the reclaiming, the patching on CASA 12, there's just a tremendous amount that they do accomplish in a year, in addition to the hauling and placing gravel and grading when it rains. So it is a busy year for them. And then our superintendent worked with Engineer Hass and staff to create and/or update our snow removal, our calcium chloride, and our sign policies, all of which the board did approve. And then he worked with our shop division to demonstrate and purchase a cloud-based fleet maintenance tracking program, because we were doing it all on paper. And so that is just a huge efficiency change for our shop division. So it was a big year for the shop. And then we're going to get to the financial statements, which is, of course, the stuff that I tend to geek out a little bit on. So this is the first part of our financial statement. As you can see, we had just under $2.9 million on hand for cash at year end. That is a decrease of $395,060.98 from 2023. That was expected because, again, we had to do a 41% match on the highway department storage facility from our reserves. So 59% was state aid money, 41% was that, and it was the same for our salt sand facility the year prior. So our cash, and particularly our unallocated reserves, have taken a major hit the last 2 years, but it was planned. Okay. Other things are normal fluctuations. Accounts receivable decreased by just under $59,000. Our due from state aid increased significantly, and that is because of the open storage facility and Grand Portage projects, where we carry payables from state aid until the project is finalized, because we can't ask for all of the money up front, of course. We can only ask for about 95%. And so we are carrying some of that as a due from state aid. And so that increased by $679,000. And then our allotment balance for state aid decreased by $1.9 million. And again, that's because we were using so much money on the Grand Portage project, and then for the 59% match on the storage facility. Our inventory reserves went up a little bit, $126,500, again, due to rising costs of everything. Our liabilities categories, as I mentioned, fluctuate from year to year depending on which bills and payroll are pending at year end. Our deferred revenue, again, that state aid money, is down $1.468 million due to what we have used on those two main state aid projects, Portage and the highway storage facility. The main area we like to talk about is fund balance, of course. Statutorily, we are required to set aside for inventory reserves whatever our balance is for inventory when we do our year-end count. And so this year, that's $768,000 and change. I mentioned that reserve for equipment that is so high right now. You see it's over $900,000. Two tandem axle truck orders that we have reserves for, because we haven't received the trucks, total $620,599. And so that is held right there until we actually get those trucks. They're the 23 and 24 truck orders. And then we have $150,000 that we've been setting aside, 50 a year, so that we can replace our armor radios, which are outdated. And so if you take that out of our reserves for equipment replacement and would have just unallocated that we're trying to hold for, say, 25, 26 purchases, that would be $141,164 rather than $911,000. So if you factor that out of our fund balance, if those trucks had arrived and were paid for, our total fund balance would be $2.66 million. Right now, it's showing $3.4 million because of those reserves in equipment. Our undesignated fund balance is $1.14 million. From 2020 to 2022, it totaled $2 million to $3.1 million. We've used over $1 million to construct those two facilities. So we knew that was going to happen. Now our goal is to start rebuilding that now that we have those two facilities built. And in fact, when I get to the budget summary, I will talk about the fact that we did try and set aside about $109,025 to start rebuilding our reserves, because we need to have that on hand to pay, in particular, construction payments. And one of the things I will talk about either now or when I get to the budget slide is how crucial that is in a year like 2025, where our big Mill the Hill project is underway. And it is a $12 million project, and of that $12 million, about 1.6 is state aid money, and we can get 95% of that up front. Everything else is reimbursement based, and so we have to outlay the money and then submit, and some of those sources, it can be 45 to 60 days before we're going to be reimbursed. And that's why our reserve balance is so critical, and it is a little low right now. We talk every year about town road distributions. The board approved a formula a number of years ago to provide money to the towns from state aid as we get our annual allocation, which is based 50% on population, 50% on certified town road mileage. We do receive a portion of that for our 55.11 miles of unorganized territory roads as approved about 6 years ago now. And that is crucial because that gives us access to town bridge and special town bridge monies, which we have utilized to be fixing our structurally deficient bridges on those UT roads. And we're over $3 million, I believe, in money just from special town bridge and town bridge since we approved that. And that's money that we don't have to ask the taxpayers for here. So that is a significant revenue source for us. This is a slide we like to show every year just to highlight the accounts payable in major categories. And so we talk about all of the wages and benefits payable. There is a new one up there this year. You're going to see sick leave payable. That is a federal reporting standard that was implemented for 2024. We have a couple of employees who are long-term who have their old sick leave banks still. And what the federal requirement asks us to do is look at that balance, estimate how much those employees may use before they leave, and then report that this year. So that is a small portion of that because they really don't use much of it, the particular employees we have, and they will forfeit that at retirement. They don't get to keep that. So that's something new. And then, of course, we talked about the contracts payable. You can see that the two contracts at the bottom have the larger amount of retainage, of course, because they're more expensive projects. And then you see the long-term lease payable, and that, of course, was a $40,000 annual payment for 4 years, and then a balloon payment in 2025, which has been made. Yay, it's paid off. And then this is a page for state aid finance that highlights our changes in cash and fund balance from the beginning of the year to the end of year. And the one thing I want to point out here, because it is a different fund balance total than on that prior page, and that is because here, this is fund balance that is not statutorily required to be set aside, so inventory reserve is not shown in this total. So if we added the $768,000 to that $2.663 million, you'd get back to the earlier fund balance total. I always want to show people, because our balance sheet requires us to show that inventory reserve as well. But for state aid finance, it's a little different, the format that we report it in, but the totals do agree. We'd like to talk a little bit about road program maintenance, and there's going to be two different reports that I'm going to show. This one is the more general report, and for everyone's ease, I will remind you that CASA roads comprise roads 1 through 23, excepting sections within the city limits of Grand Marais, which are the MASA roads in the next category. And we have just a handful of those. We have Wisconsin, Broadway, Fifth Avenue West, the portions of 7 and 12 that are in the city limits, and then 8th Avenue West. So those are our MASA roads. And then county roads comprise roads 24 through 103 collectively. And what I always find interesting on this slide is the cost per mile for the year, and I like to compare it to the year before, because generally there's not a big difference when you think about how many miles we're dealing with. So for CASA in 2023, the cost per mile was $11,938 compared to $11,396 in 24. Muni, the MASA, for 23 was $9,900.72 compared to $83,1560 in 2024. County had the biggest change. Usually there's one category where we might see, maybe $4,000 or $5,000 cost per mile difference. And this was the category this year. It's $18,059.85 in 23 compared to $14,125.57 in 24. And what that probably means is that there was less gravel applied in 24 because we did more graveling on some of those bigger roads in 23. And then UT roads, there's almost no difference. It was 5701.59 in 23 and 5707.22 in 24. So that held really steady. And then the next two slides are going to have more breakdown. These are the major categories that we have to account for state aid finance. And so in the three main categories, CASA, MASA, and county, the snow removal comprises the major cost across all three road categories. However, for UT roads, the higher costs were in the area of smoothing surface, gravel roads, not surprising, and brushing and weed control. So for 2024 design and construction, I put just the total in the various categories. Those totals include the 4 projects that we closed out in 2023, along with an 8th Avenue West city project in the campground that we had to help administer. So those are included in there. What I really want to point out is the 14 bridge projects that we are working on. One of Robbie's goals when he came was to address all of our structurally deficient bridges by 2027 year end, and I believe we're still on track to do that. That is a major accomplishment, and if it weren't for Robbie's active pursuit of grant and alternate funding sources, we wouldn't be able to do this. And then I promised a quick rundown of the 25 budget. It was at time of budget preparation in May of 24. Sorry, too many years. $23 million, and $15.9 million of that was projects. We did move the Arrowhead Trail and Chicago Bay collaborative projects back to 26, which happens a lot with our budget. You'll notice that when we report, we're estimating in May that we're going to actually get all the funding and get all the design work done. And a lot of times there's a glitch in one of those areas, and so a project quite often does get moved 1 year. So yes, our 25 budget did include that project, and it was delayed. Gravel crushing and calcium chloride are the same. And then, of course, we ordered a tandem axle truck this year, a couple of pickups. We've replaced our skid steer, and then we are finishing our armor replacement schedule. We have our money for local projects, and then we have that addition to the fund balance. And I do want to tell you, I did make one correction. It's $310.5 for local projects. I had a typo, and I didn't catch it until yesterday when I was reviewing it, so I apologize. Too many numbers. And then, of course, highway humor. This is an actual road sign in Alaska on Grand Drive, and it's on the way to one of their resorts that's on a very remote and windy road, and they have fun signs all the way up, supposedly to keep people's attention focused. And I'm thinking, okay, is that true? Or are you too busy, looking at the signs? But I thought it was a fun sign. And we could relate to that in Cook County. And so then I just want to let everyone know that our highway report, the full copy, is available on the Highway Department webpage under Documents and Reports, and then we will open the floor to questions.
I understand from some neighbors that it really works to bring cookies to the highway department.
Yes,
If they want certain things done, so.
absolutely.
I won't say what.
Actually, I would say, Chair Storley, that it helps with the morale for our maintenance crew in particular during the
Yes,
winter
that's
because
right.
of all the long hours. And, we do get some compliments, but those thank yous mean the world to that crew.
You bet, yeah. And you might get one cookie if you're in the office,
Maybe,
maybe.
if I ask nicely. Most of the time, they're gone by the time I know they're there.
Any questions or comments?
Just thank you. Amazing work always, and in particular, I think just the bridge deficient goal is bonkers, and even more bonkers that we're on track. So very, very impressive. Thank you.
Thanks.
Commissioner Gamble?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, the word impressive is a good word. It's, you work with numbers like kids do when they pull out their action figures. They seem to be very excited. Yeah.
I've been known to balance the month end, and when it balances to the penny, which it usually does, the clerk will hear, "Yes!"
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's your institutional knowledge for one thing, plus your familiarity with the numbers, and sometimes giving reports like this can be very dry and hesitant, but there's none of that exists when you present. And I have been taking this course with NATO on budgeting and evidence base, and the integrity of the work speaks volumes for what we do in stewardship of both taxpayer dollars and dollars available to us because we work hard to get them. So just great appreciation. Words seem to be little response to all the effort and the work that goes in providing what you do in the Highway Department. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gamble.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Our next item is going to be presented by Tim Nelson on the Hanson interim use permit.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Yeah, I've got 3 items before you today, the first 2 of which are recommendations from the Planning Commission and the public hearing that have been held previously. First one is the Hanson interim use permit, and this is actually for an interim use to place a recreational vehicle for seasonal use, residential use in the Lutzen Town Center Residential Incentive Zone District, which is one we don't really enter into a lot, but it was created through the Lutzen sub-area planning efforts when we did the comprehensive land use plan back in the late 90s and early 2000s. So that is specifically for that, and actually the purpose of that zone district is for enhanced or increased densities that are closer to built-up areas. So it's actually to serve this kind of purpose. And the intent for this is to go ahead and place the recreational vehicle, for a period of 4 years to be able to build a second home. I will say, and I'll touch on this a little bit, that the first 2 cases here involve after the fact. And it's just, we can gloss over that and it just goes by that, but it's kind of jumps out at you on the page that these are after the fact, which is troublesome for folks. And you know, we've all heard that adage of it's better to ask for forgiveness than it is for permission. And, but when considering a request like this or other ones that are after the fact, the tendency for any kind of deliberative body is to kind of think a little bit more adversely upon that request just because it was acted on as after the fact. And this is certainly not an issue limited to Cook County, though in the past we've created committees and things and have gone over how do we address after the fact land use issues. We've looked at the after the fact fees that are associated with that, and that's one way that we do that. And it's in so much a bigger problem that the Minnesota State Legislature about a dozen years ago actually changed the statute to create two evaluating trains when looking at projects, one for normal requests and the other for those that are after the fact. Now, it didn't take long for that was challenged to the courts, and the Minnesota Supreme Court actually knocked that down. And they basically ruled that, specifically with land use cases, it's the actual impact on the land use that is at issue and not necessarily how it came about. So when these are evaluated, these are to be evaluated as to their actual impacts in land use and in perpetuity and such like that, rather than the after the fact itself. Now, I will say that this had come up with some of the Planning Commission members had kind of approached me on what do we do about this. So we will be discussing this further, looking again, because it's good every few years to take a look at our fees and such like that as to how to basically address the after the facts and see how we can bring them into the fold prior to the placement of any structures or any construction or impacts on the property. All right. All that being said, we'll get back to the case at hand. This is not uncommon. And in fact, many years ago, decades ago, when I arrived here, there was this discussion about the placement of recreational vehicles. We didn't even used to permit them to begin with. We just allowed them to be placed on there, and the intent was that people would place them on there with for the purpose of staying in those while they're constructing their second cabins or their homes and such, and that would just give a place to be able to stay. This one here, you know, we've gone through and have kind of beefed up the permitting process and turned them, you know, into, especially with the involvement or the kind of enhancement of the vacation rentals and all of that stuff that has come up, that we've made a more vigorous permitting type process for them. And now in circumstances such as this, we do have them listed as an interim use, or we would consider them to be an interim use. And so that's what you have before you today. Is this first one is the placement in Lutsen for a 4-year period for specifically to reside in while a residence is being built. And there was the public hearing earlier this month. I didn't have the opportunity to attend this. We do have Commissioner Sullivan who did attend this, so she would be able to answer any firsthand questions. I did watch the video on that and read all of the reports. So this is one of the more unique type Planning Commission meetings where the meeting didn't last hardly long at all. So there was not a lot of objection. In fact, there wasn't any objection to this particular case. And it was voted unanimously to go ahead and recommend in approval for this interim use permit. And I can go ahead and read the conditions of the approval, or you have them and have had them on the document before you ahead of time. It's up to you.
Questions or comments? I know one thing, when I drive around, I always see, oh, here's a new driveway. I wonder what's going to happen there. So I've been curious about that particular driveway, and now I know. And when I think about a town center, it's kind of misconception in a way, because to me, town center is Clearview. That's the town center of our little town. And this is over on Ski Hill Road, but it's minutia, you know, that's all it is. So Anyway, Commissioner Sullivan.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. One of the things I did want to point out that came up with both of these cases is the reason for the 4 years, and it's the high cost of construction. And so there was, discussion about that, but I did want to make sure that all the members of the county board were aware of that reason for the 4 years.
Commissioner Gamble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tim, you made the comment about the more vigorous permitting process. Is that related to what we're requiring, or is that related to the financial aspect of that? In other words, under the determination by the Supreme Court as to what we are allowed to do or not do when we look at trying to be more vigorous to encourage the behavior that we want in making application. When you say more vigorous permitting process, what does it relate to, the financial or the requirements?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Gamble, that's a good question, and I would say both, actually. We have increased the level of scrutiny on these because, especially from the time that I've been here where we did not permit these, we just allowed them as a permitted use with no fees coming in or anything, to the point now where this particular case is going through interim use permit and has received the additional fees of the after-the-fact fees. And so, yes, it's additional scrutiny by virtue of even just being reviewed, and we review them, particularly looking at the human waste component of it and the septic type capacities and things and the treatments that have to be done through this, or collection in a tank and such like that. So those kinds of things, the driveways, make sure wetlands aren't impacted. So there is a more vigorous review of the on-ground activity, plus there is an increase in the fees. The discussion with the fees is difficult because, we want to be able to maybe establish a criteria where the fee may be a deterrent for somebody to go after the fact, and so you want those fees kind of as high as possible. But again, the courts have also come back and said the fees, after the fact fees, cannot be punitive in nature, and so they have to actually reflect the amount of additional scrutiny that is applied to that particular project, as opposed to trying to throw on as much of it's not a fine or a penalty, it is an actual fee.
Thank you for that explanation.
Any other questions? Commissioner Sullivan.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution for a 4-year interim use permit for a recreational vehicle for seasonal use in the Lutzen Town Center Residential Incentive Zone District.
I'll support.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Item number 2 then is another request for the placement of, this time, 2 recreational vehicles, and for similar reasons, to be able to reside in during the construction of or being able to construct and bring on to the property other residences. And this is Timothy Johnson, and this is over to the east side of town, more by Wrecking Jays, which this zone is actually a light industrial zone district. And unfortunately, we do have a provision in our zoning ordinance that allows us this flexibility to determine any use that is not specifically identified as a permitted, conditional, or prohibited use may, at the county's discretion, be processed as an interim use permit, and that gives us the ability to look at the property-specific and area-specific impacts and things like that and determine, okay, yes, in here it would fit. Normally it wouldn't necessarily fit, but here we do. So we do have that flexibility for us, and that's what we kind of employ in this particular one. And this, again, is very similar. It is also after the fact, and all the fees have been paid for it. This also was part of the public hearing that was conducted earlier this month, and there were no voices in opposition to it. There was some issue with regards to the noise and a generator being employed to recharge the batteries and such like that to keep electric going through the night. And so there was additional or restructuring of the conditions that kind of imposed a physical barrier to limit the noise from escaping the property. But then again, it was also pointed out, I mean, that it is a light industrial zone district, and So noise is to kind of be expected in that area, but it was agreed upon by the property owner, so it was added into the conditions. Again, this was voted unanimously in support for recommending approval to the Board of Commissioners, and there you have it.
Any questions or comments? If not, I'll hear a motion.
Yep, I'd like to make a motion, Madam Chair, to approve the resolution for a 4-year interim use permit for 2 recreational vehicles for seasonal use, light industrial zone district at 18 Taylor Lane after the fact with the conditions included.
Support.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you again, Commissioners and Madam Chair. And the final item is a continuation of the item that we discussed at the Committee of the Whole meeting this last week. And this is regarding the memorandum of agreement with Grand Portage. Again, just recapping that discussion, we basically for many decades have had kind of equal jurisdiction only over those privately owned properties within the boundaries of Grand Portage. And basically that has led to some confusions among property owners in terms of they would come to us and do we also need a permit from Grand Portage, and we would always say yes, and we would never provide advice as to what their requirements are, which we wanted to incentivize them to be able to make the contacts with the tribe members as well. So basically this resolution, and I did forward this language on to both the county attorney's office and the Minnesota County's Insurance Trust legal folks, and we tweaked it a little bit and basically came up with the agreement that you have before you, which is acceptable to Grand Portage, and it essentially turns over all land use regulatory activities or administrative functions to Grand Portage for those privately owned parcels that are inside the boundaries of Grand Portage. And you guys should have a map that would indicate that this really isn't very impactful. There's very few, relatively speaking, in those boundaries, but it at least creates then that ability for clarity in land use regulations. And I would also say that there is a provision in here that should something down the road, that, you know, on the side of either party, this agreement can be terminated. So it's not a lock in perpetuity. So I guess I would just open up for any questions for you.
I appreciate you coming to the Committee of the Whole, too, to give us a whole background and be able to ask questions then. Commissioner Gamble?
I would agree, Commissioner Storley, that appreciated the discussion with tribe leadership so that we could understand that and have a context moving forward. And having said that, I would make a motion to approve and authorize the signing of the proposed memorandum of agreement with Grand Portage, where Cook County would relinquish the jurisdictional administration of land use activities on privately owned properties solely within the boundaries of Grand Portage.
Support.
Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to Human Resources, approval of a job description by Allison.
Good morning. I'm going to have Robbie come up too, just in case there are questions. And then, of course, as I'm looking at the board agenda, I was like, what a dope. I didn't even attach the job description to the agenda item. Oh my gosh, it's been a little busy lately within the last couple weeks. So I just quickly emailed that to you all. But I believe you also had a chance to review it at the last week's COW. But again, I just emailed it for your reference. I also emailed it to Jana so she can attach it. My apologies. All right, so today, now let me bring up my computer. I have a job description to bring forth to you. So this is actually technically a revision, an update to an existing job description that we have on file. We just don't currently have the position filled. So it is at the Highway Department. It is the Engineering Technician Supervisor job description. So what was supposed to be in your packet, which is now a separate email, is the updated job description. And this is also being presented with a change in a grade after it's been reviewed by DDA and follows the Keystone scoring matrix, just like any of our other job description reviews. In that process, it has been rescored from a grade 190 to a 200. And in terms of kind of some of the background information, which I believe you're aware of as to like why this is being brought forth, again, Robbie's here for any additional questions. So currently, the structure at the Highway Department, we have Robbie as the county engineer, directly oversees the 3 engineering technicians, with Scott Panolkin set to resign and leave us at the kind of middle of October. He is taking with him I think almost 2 decades, I think it's almost 20 years, about the same time frame as me, of experience with that department and kind of just the general operations, especially a lot of technical experience and assistance that he has provided the various engineering technicians, especially as we've recruited more of the technicians are kind of starting out. So Robbie identified that could actually be a little bit cause for concern in terms of the workload and the supervision piece if we bring in a newer technician and then Robbie already with the workload, then with the direct supervision, and Robbie's workload and work focus is very different than the engineering technician. So there could be kind of a gap in that ability to have the experience and that specific kind of technical knowledge to be able to provide to any incoming staff. So he is determined to kind of bring back and fill in that engineering technician supervisor position. This was last filled by Randy Roberts back in, 2022 when he left the department. That at that time, because Scott had kind of arbitrarily taken on some of kind of those mentoring roles, that they just stuck with the 3 engineering technicians and didn't refill the supervisor position. So again, looking at bringing that back, so there would be the county engineer overseeing the engineering technician supervisor, and then the engineering technician supervisor, it's a mouthful, would then oversee the other 2 engineering technicians. It would just kind of, again, kind of support the varied and very distinct workload between the county engineer and the engineering technicians.
In light of our report this morning from the Highway Department, it gives a broader perspective as to what your expectations are and what you're looking forward to in the future, for sure. Questions or comments? Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. When we had this discussion, and just for clarification for us as well as the public, right now we have 2 engineers in that position. 3?
3 engineering.
And so, and so we're changing that 1 position with an oversight because of what we're losing in the institutional knowledge. And that was one of the questions that was just raised, is are we hiring in addition to whatever? But no, we're not. We're just changing and reformatting. I think in our discussion when this was proposed, that basically the learned experience and moving forward and seeing the shift in the positions and the history with those individuals, that this seemed to make sense. And it's always a healthy thing when there's change. It's an opportunity to step back and reevaluate in the context moving forward with the pieces that you have. So that makes sense. I think that in the discussion, when you're looking at it, in my mind, part of it was, well, that supervision role and mentoring, can that not defer to your position? And your response was that that's not really what I'm focused on, and the best use of resources of people and time, given what I do relative to generating monies for projects, that this seems to make sense. And I think to underscore the whole discussion is the evidence indicators that inform the decisions are what we need to understand in order to support you in that role. And I felt that for the community, to see the difference in how the organizational structure has enabled you to be able to generate revenues that have benefit to us as a county is one of those evidence indicators that is huge that supports this decision, so.
No, and that's a really good point, and I know, and I appreciated the chance you and I had talked yesterday a little bit to see if I could pull together, some numbers to actually put, a potential value or something on this, because I spend a lot of time looking for money, bring money from, basically from St. Paul or from Washington to here, and so that we can do all the projects that you saw Lisa talk about earlier. So what I did, and this is pretty conservative, but historically, our department has received like bridge bonds. That's nothing new. I'll say the quantity of it is probably new, but we've gotten that in the past. So if I take that out of the equation, another grant we've received historically is the local road improvement program. So I'll take that one out as well. But over the last 5 years, we've been able to secure just under $11.5 million in new money coming into the county. So these are new funding opportunities that have not been pursued in the past. So that averages about $2.3 million annually. I think another point, and it kind of gets to, this is going to get a little heady, but that's okay. It's just kind of my ethos in running the department. I have it written on my little whiteboard if you ever see it in a meeting perhaps, and it's just a couple of words, and it's a good reminder. It just says support to plan. And what that means to me and what I think it means for our department, you saw it earlier in the presentation that Lisa gave, was I'm here to support my staff for today so that I can worry about tomorrow. And I wholeheartedly believe in that. That presentation you saw earlier that Lisa gave, you don't want me giving that. And I can't. No different than what we talked about, the other day with. That's why we have, Matt and Jesse in their maintenance supervisor roles and superintendent roles. I can't tell you how to plow a road. They can. That's their prerogative. So this, to me, is the same thing where we can talk construction and I can go through planning and all of that, but when it gets to I need help drawing the plans and putting the plans together, honestly, I can't do that. I can't provide that support to our technicians. And so that's where I see this role as vital in that, where what you saw from the presentation Lisa gave, what we talk about in our maintenance department, what we talk about even in our ag side of things with Tia, also, I'll put a plug in. I didn't see any of you at the invasive species event this weekend. So, but the context she gave and the information that was available there, again, I can't do that. But we have experts in those fields for that, and so that's really how I see this role, is the continued growth where I can still free up to put together the 10-year plan, go to town hall meetings when questions come up, do the research to say why we can't set our own speed limits everywhere in the county, that type of stuff. I can do that instead of getting bogged down and trying to remember how to do line weights in CAD. That's my opinion on how I should run the department. If you guys think differently, I'm open to a conversation. But that's how I see this role, is that, so.
Did you say conversation or confrontation?
Conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Sullivan?
Well, I just appreciate you sharing your perspective, and also, Allison, thank you for sending that job description or position description to us. And with that, I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of the updated engineering technician supervisor job description and grade.
I'll support. We have a motion and a second. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passed unanimously.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robbie.
Thanks.
We'll be moving on to Administrator discussing the bid for the Hovland Transfer Station.
Okay, so as you know, we have a number of capital projects going on right now. But the Hovland Transfer Station is probably one of the first ones we're going to see getting done. I believe all of the groundwork is done and the area is cleared, and it looks pretty amazing last time I got there. I see Commissioner White shaking her head, yes. So this is a bid for the fence, to fence it in, and it came in under what we had estimated by about $15,000, so that's always good. So the fencing itself is not only tall enough to keep critters out and people that want to steal garbage, I don't know who they are, but it also will have privacy slats all around it. So it won't be something that the neighbors have to like stare at, that's obnoxious. So it's just simple kind of a thing. We just wanted to bring you this bid, and as soon as you approve it, it'll be ordered, and we'll see that going up shortly.
Any questions or comments about this project? I'll hear a motion on the bid for the Hovland Transfer Station.
Moved.
Support.
Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. How about some administrator updates?
How about, could I do the addendum
Sure,
that we
you can do
added
that.
first, and I'll do the updates last? This, as an item we added to the agenda today, it was just handed to me right before the meeting. It's basically an addendum to our master contract with this Sawtooth Mountain Clinic. We have a master contract, particularly with PHHS, to provide different services, public health, like WIC, things like that. So this particular one provides us some redundancy for our mental health supervision. It provides some supervisory redundancy up there. So it's an old contract. We're just updating some amounts and redoing it. So that's all I got on that.
Any questions or comments?
Make a motion to approve the addendum to the Sawtooth Mountain Clinic contract.
Support.
Any further questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Now we'll have some updates.
All right, so I mentioned capital projects, and I wandered down to the basement the other day and in between meetings. I don't know if you've all had a chance to do that, but I think they were painting. And I saw a cabinet truck outside today, so I think we're still on track to be ready to move people down there the first week of July. So it's very exciting to be able to use that part of the building as a professional space and use the resources we already have. So I applaud Brooke's leadership on that and keeping that moving and doing such a great job with that. I mentioned the Hovland Transfer Station, which is moving along. That's very exciting. And when I go over to the one in Grand Marais, of course, where we're going to be building something, huge piles of dirt. Have you been by there?
Yeah.
I mean, because they're digging, they have to get it, a trench that's 17 feet deep for the tops of the trucks to be able to move the garbage in there. And so all of that dirt and rock and whatever else they're pulling out of there, they've got a big machine over there that's like sorting it, so like gravel comes out over here and sand comes out over here and, topsoil comes out of here. And what that means is a lot of money being saved because instead of hauling all of that in, when they go back and do the roads in there, they're creating it on site. So it's very exciting. And there's some bedrock in there. They're trying to figure out how to maybe use that and reduce the amount of concrete. So there's a lot of things going on there that lead to some more money savings. So very excited about that. I think, we should be looking at like precast panels end of July, early August. So it's going to start becoming remarkably different over there soon. Very exciting. So, a project that's been dear to my heart for almost 2 years. So it's fun to see an idea come to life, and appreciate all of your support for that. The administrator recruitment process, as you know, we have made an offer to Kristen Trebel-Hallersma, I think. She was busy over the weekend running the Duluth Grandma's Marathon. So, and she still looked alive when we saw her yesterday after doing that. And those conversations are progressing, and I feel like we're getting very close to working that through. I was hoping maybe we could finalize that by today, but we'll be pushing that to another meeting. There is just to let the public know, there is a jury trial starting today. And so the courthouse will be kind of busy, the parking lot will be busy. So just note that, and we anticipate that to be going on through Friday. And kind of on that same note, next week is the July 4th holiday, so a week from Friday, so the courthouse will be closed that day. And it's sort of an amendment to that. On the 3rd, I'll be not here because I'm going to be picking up my puppy. So just wanted to let you all know that. We are, I think, moving into July, and perhaps Brady can comment on this more. We'll be starting more conversations about the budget. We've received those from the department heads, so there'll be probably more presentations and opportunities to discuss that. So that's what I've got. You have any questions for me?
Okay, no questions? We'll move on then to employee concerns or commissioner concerned reports. We have something big to share, maybe? Commissioner Sullivan.
All right. Well, a number of us went down to our AMC District 1 meeting, and I'm sure other commissioners that were who were there will share as well. But one of the things I wanted to bring up related to our work here in the county is that there is direct pay for counties for clean energy projects. And if you'll recall, our law enforcement center is solar ready. And eligible projects that are turned in for direct pay, it will pay for up to 70% of the cost of solar installation. And the other thing is that other eligible projects include electric vehicles and chargers. So I'm going to share that information with Brooke Lessard because I think there are potential applications here in our community. The HRA met last week, and Commissioner Gamble may have some additional information, but one of the things that came up there is a discussion about the establishment of a local housing trust fund. And there has, through state legislation, been some changes in the way that you dedicate local public revenue for housing, but it provides a consistent, flexible resource for housing within our jurisdiction. So there was discussion about that. And then a little update on things at the airport related to storing our apartment modules for the Heights. We heard back from the FAA twice. We heard once that they received all our letters of support. There were 5 of them that came. And then late yesterday, we got the following from Marcus Watson, who is our contact for the FAA here in Cook County. And he just says the following: thanks for reaching out to our office about the proposed interim non-aeronautical use of airport property. We're interpreting the proposed interim non-aeronautical land use to be within Parcel 2 as identified on Exhibit A, which was turned in. And it showed that there was federal funding participation back in 1950. That results in us having to submit some additional paperwork. So we have been asked, and this is a requirement, to have a map with a very specific identification of that portion of the property, documents on how the land was acquired back in the 50s through federal conveyance, current use of the property, current and future aeronautical demand of the airport, including a copy of the master plan, wait list, forecasts, etc., which the FAA has, but in a different department. Proposed use of the property, length of the use, environmental documentation to support the FAA land use change approval, and it will likely be called a documented categorical exclusion. So I am trying to digest this, and we'll be spending the next couple of days gathering what they want, and maybe reaching out to Brady and our county attorney and the airport to get that all in order and send it on its way quickly. Commissioner Gamble.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your work on this.
Housing is our number one priority.
Nothing is, nothing is easy. Did they give any indication, if we provide the things that they're looking for, as to how much time they would take in determination to get back to us?
No.
Because that sometimes is problematic. And what I would say is that if we're looking at our options and our timeline and everything else, weighing all of that as to which direction we would go if in fact we have options. Not to say that we don't appreciate their considering it as a flat-out no, as opposed to a flat-out no, but the encumbrances might be prohibitive, especially if we don't have an idea as to how much time they're going to take in deliberation before they get back to us.
I don't know how much time they, by statute, have up to 45 days. But they gave me a contact who I will be calling this morning, and I'll try to get more information on that. Other updates, just real quickly, we had the Gunflint Lake Property Owners Association, and Jim Morrison, who is the head of our volunteer fire department on the Gunflint Trail, shared some information about sheltering in place, which is new to kind of all the evacuation work that we have been focusing on in recent years. And so it was quite a lengthy presentation, and there was no one there from the sheriff's department, and of course the sheriff is the one who actually calls an evacuation. So I'll be trying to meet with Sheriff Eliason and others to get more information for all of us and for our community about sheltering in place. And then Saturday, our former county surveyor, Wayne Henshey's memorial service occurred. Commissioner Storley and I and a number of other county employees were there, and it was a very nice service. And I did go to the invasives booth. I was at the event, but I didn't go and talk to anybody. I just kind of cruised by. Very well attended and exciting. And yesterday we had our safety committee meeting, and we're looking at just reviewing potential overlap from wellness and the safety committee, making sure we're all kind of streamlining our processes and doing the work that we need to do. And that would be my report.
Anyone else? Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. To follow up on Commissioner Sullivan's comment relative to the HRA, HRA had its a strategic planning session in conjunction with its regular meeting, monthly meeting, and so I participated in that. It was in conflict with the AMC meeting on that day, but I felt it was important to participate in that as one of two commissioners. And so looking at that process, we got through quite a few things to identify where we want to focus our attention. And we will conclude that at a subsequent meeting, the strategic planning. And our focus basically is on what kind of housing should we be providing. With the housing that we have seen that we've provided, how are we doing in that regard? How is that meeting actual need? And affordability is a significant issue when it comes to the housing. And so understanding what information informs our direction is best served when it comes from the people that actually live in our county. And there are studies and things that we can extrapolate information from, but it's always best to ask the people that you're trying to serve. The other thing, when my wife and I had crossed the border the other day, and I just asked Border Patrol on this side, as far as housing goes, I guess 1976, 75, something like that, 4 acres are set aside. So there is that acreage that is up there that I was not aware of. But that was one of the things that certainly were identified, along with assisted living for people that are moving from homes or apartment complexes into assistance before they would move into a care center. So that's beneficial. It's always good to step back, especially when we have a new director, Jeff Brand, in that position, to be able to look at and receive direction as to where we're going to invest our resources, both time, energy, and money. And we did touch on the trust fund, and I've mentioned this before, but there, in many seminars and workshops, they're just saying for organizations to be able to look at developing trust funds, tapping into the wealth that exists is how a lot of organizations will, moving forward, be successful because they create those funding mechanisms. And it can be for individuals that choose to invest in something that they want to leave a legacy to, which is important. And I mentioned in the last meeting that our University Extension, we had a gentleman from the University of Minnesota present on the wealth that exists that should be considered. So telling your story is hugely important in that regard for people that want to invest in something that will live beyond their lifetime. And then also the last of the 5-week course with NACO on budgeting concludes tomorrow, Wednesday. And it's been very informative. Again, counties, number of staff from different counties throughout the United States that have participated in that, that it would be my intent to take the notes and the information that I've received in attending this course and share that, at least have a discussion, depending upon timeline and different things with our new administrator, and just look at this. I think anything that we can do to inform ourselves and bring evidence to a community whose dollars we spend is very beneficial. So, thank you.
Anyone else have a report? The district meeting was really well attended and a great update, and there was so much information that we asked Julie to forward that, so all of you have received that. Especially I was concerned about Medicaid and SNAP, which is discouraging, but, you know, time will tell yet. July is when they're going to, supposedly, Congress will act on part of it. So it was, you know, always good information, and you, like I said, you received all that. This coming Thursday, I will be attending the PILT meeting, and I believe Gary is going to join us, are you?
Yes.
Okay. And that discussion is going to be, the point is that we really need a qualified assessor who would have background in minerals and all of that. So St. Louis County has put a lot of information together, which we'll receive on Thursday, tomorrow.
Wednesday?
Wednesday, yes. It was going to be another date, okay. Yes, and we'll receive some info, and we'll bring it back to you and just see, you know, there possibly will be cost in this and how we need to look forward to someone outside of Minnesota to be looked at for hire on that. So more to come on that. Anything else for reports? Okay. Upcoming meetings to note. Today we have our budget meeting, so now we're getting into the thick of things. And that's at 3 o'clock with a Zoom. Otherwise, normal, regular meetings coming up for the end of June, and now we're looking at July already. And July 4th is coming fast. Celebration in Tofty. We also have correspondent memos, sales tax comparison through April of '25, lodging tax comparable through April of '25. And there be no further business. We're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Got inspection with the Duluth HRA.
Almost July.
I've got to have everything in.
It was so cold.
Me too.
My house